friends, welcome to this episode of Yarnyheart Fiber Art. My name is Jess. You can find me on Instagram at yarnyheart, and this is the show where I talk about all the yarny things that I've been up to. Okay, I'm gonna try and get through everything as quick as I can. I'm trying to film this in a little gap in my schedule, and there are kids screaming outside. Today I have for you one finished object and a couple updates on some of the things that I've been working on, including one new cast on for this episode. So like I said, I'm going to try and get this done pretty quickly. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing I have to share with you is my finished object for this episode, which I'm currently wearing. But this is my boho cami by Life is Cozy. It's kind of hard to see the whole thing here. I will put some pictures on the side here or here, wherever they fit, probably here. I did post this on Instagram already, so if you follow me on Instagram, you have probably seen this already. This is my finished boho cami by Life is Cozy. I only had one episode where I talked about progress on this, but I'll just kind of like give you a rundown again. Yeah, so this project was, I did this with, I have the ball band. I did this with Sincere Sheep Coastal, which is 50% Shanico wool, 25% mulberry silk, and 25% Belgian linen. And this was in the colorway Be Mine, which is just like this really nice tonal lavender kind of color. It is a sport weight, 410 yards in a skein, and I did use only one skein for this project, but there were some problems that came with that. I was really playing chicken by the time I was finishing this, to the point that there are several options that you could do to secure the straps on. Like you could do them crisscross or like any number of ways. And I had hoped to be able to do them crisscross in the back because I thought that detail was really cute. But unfortunately I did not have enough yarn left to make the straps long enough to crisscross them in the back, so they are just kind of sewn straight back. Let's see if I can turn around and show you. Yeah, so as you can see, I just kind of did them straight back. I didn't crisscross them or anything. Yeah, so I did run out of yarn. There is also an optional detail on this camisole to have two more I-cords in the front here with a tassel on the ends that you can tie them into kind of like a faux tie tassel kind of situation. And I thought that design element was really cute, but once again I used literally every centimeter of yarn just doing this, so that was not an option that was available to me, unfortunately. But one thing also that is a regret on my part, I could have knitted this even a size smaller than I did. I talked about this last episode, but my gauge was extremely loose for this project, to the point that even changing needle sizes wouldn't have really changed a whole lot in terms of my gauge. So instead I calculated how off I was gauge-wise, and according to my calculations I could have knitted 2 sizes smaller than my recommended size in the pattern, but I got scared that my calculations were wrong, and so instead I knitted 1 size smaller than my recommended size. So this is 1 size smaller than my recommended size. But having it done now, unfortunately my calculations were, well, unfortunately or fortunately, my calculations were correct, and I could have and probably should have knitted 2 sizes smaller, which would have also given me enough yarn to do whatever strap style I wanted, as well as whatever front tie style I wanted. But unfortunately it seems that just wasn't in the cards. Aside from that though, I feel like the top is a very good length for me. Like it's not too cropped. One thing though is that it is quite deep, which I like. The v-neck on here is quite deep, which I feel like I had known going into the pattern already. But kind of, it's one of those things where it's like, in theory, I was like, oh yeah, you know, that'll be fine, that won't be a problem. But then in practice, once it's finished and once it's on me, getting a little squeamish about showing that much cleavage, so to speak. Yeah. And I do have like 1 or 2 bras or bralettes that I could potentially wear with it to intentionally show off the bralette and have it, that be the intentional look. But that's not really a practical style for me to wear on like an everyday kind of basis or occasion. So I do think that a better styling option for me would be something like this, where I am layering it over a t-shirt already. The drawback of that though is that, you know, in the summer, usually the goal is to wear as few layers as possible because we are hot and sweaty. And so layering it over something is kind of defeating the purpose a little bit of knitting a summer garment, but I still think it looks cute. Because on the days or on occasions where I can just wear it by itself with just a bralette, this is an extremely breezy garment. Like, I wore this over the weekend to the farmer's market and kind of like out and about. It was a super hot day, but I did not feel sweaty like at all. This fabric kept me very, very cool. And so to that end, I loved working with this yarn so much, to the point like I definitely want to buy this yarn again in the future, and I want to make more projects with this yarn. And I think kind of the experience that I'm having, because I've talked a little bit about also how I've used Illimani Sabri, which is cotton and alpaca. And I had an okay experience knitting with that. Like, I definitely liked it a lot more than knitting with just plain cotton. But this was really, really, really nice. And I'll show you later, but I have another cast on recently that I did with Isayer Merylin, which is wool and linen. And I'm also I'm having such a great experience working with that as well. So I think what this experience so far, and what this summer so far, this season of knitting so far has taught me as of now, is that it seems like linen is my jam. It seems like linen is just kind of the right choice for me. So I'm going to keep that in mind in the future. And I did share last time, I do have yarn that I bought that is summer, but summer yarn, not linen. But I do think going forward, it's just good for me to know. Like, it's good to learn these things because, you know, as you put more years into your craft and work with different materials and learn things and learn about yourself, it's like, this is just one of the things that there's no way for you to know without just doing it and learning more. So it's all part of the learning process, and I'm learning that I really, really like working with linen. And I think a big part of this one is also the silk. So I am curious to try things like knitting for olive pure silk in the future. Or I might try Santa's Garnton Line in the future. So just future prospects that I have going on in my mind right now of the possibilities of summer knitting now that I've discovered this new love for linen and linen blend yarns and garments. Yeah, so it's very nice. As someone who is a self-proclaimed summer knitting hater, yeah, it's really nice. So yeah, I think that's really all I had to say about this one so far. Can't think of anything else. Yeah, so that's my boho cami by Life is Cozy, and I love it. I guess one thing to show is that how roomy it is, because it's intended for pretty much no ease, but I have quite a bit of positive ease here, and especially, I don't think you can see it very well here, especially with this very oversized drop shoulder shirt that I'm wearing, but there's a lot of extra fabric right here, kind of like on the outside of the breast area. That is one thing that I mentioned last time that I didn't this time. You can knit a different size for your overbust and then knit a smaller size for your underbust if that fits your body proportions better, which it does for me. I'm starting to wish that I had knitted this one size smaller, because if I had, I think this extra fabric would fit in a really good spot on my bust where it's being put to good use, as opposed to right now where it's kind of hanging off to the side and it's extra. But that's on me. I didn't hit gauge. I didn't hit gauge. I knowingly didn't hit gauge, and that has led to all the problems that I'm experiencing now. But despite all of those things, and despite it being completely my fault and knowingly my fault, I am happy with how it turned out. I really like it. I promise. I really like it. Okay, so moving on, because like I said, I am kind of on a time crunch. I'm gonna get into my whips. I don't have any new acquisitions, but I'll just kind of do my whips like in order with my new cast on last. So that's how we're gonna do this. Okay, so my first whip is one that we've all seen a couple times before, but this is my Very Berry Garden socks. I'm not going to spend too much time on these because, I mean, you've already seen the first finished one, and having seen the first finished one, there's not a whole lot of surprises with the second one. So I'll just say that they're going swimmingly. Here's my progress on the second one. It's honestly not a whole lot more than I showed you last time. I haven't been working on these as much because I really wanted to finish this. And then coming up, the test set that I've been working on has just kind of taken precedence. Yeah, so that's just kind of how it's going. So these are the Very Berry socks by Yucca, as I've shared a couple times before. And then the yarn is... This yarn is from Seismic Yarns, which is based out of San Francisco. And this is yarn that I purchased from Firebird Yarns, which is a local yarn store also in San Francisco. That's stock Seismic. And this colorway is exclusive to Firebird Yarns shop, and it is called Sugar Daddy. And it's just kind of like this cool pink with... It's like a strawberry pink with a lot of like hot pink and orange and red and a couple blacks in there, but just this really nice pink variegation. And that's kind of how those have been going. Yeah, like I said, there's not a whole lot to say about a second sock aside from the fact that I'm knitting a second sock. Yeah. Checking the time. So my next whip that I have to share with you is a test knit by Hazy Moon on Instagram, which I've also shared a couple times, but this is the Snowfall sweater, which once again is in testing, and it's one part of a pattern bundle, which is either a vest or a full sleeve sweater. I'm doing the sweater version called the Snowfall sweater. The other one is going to be the Fall Snow vest. And it's just this all over cabled sweater. So I have now finished the front panel. I believe last time we spoke, I had this part done, and then wrong part. I had this part done, and I was like about to pick up and knit the second part, but now my front panel's done. Ta-da! Now that it's done, I am significantly less worried about the final fit. Like even putting it up to me now, you can kind of see that it is pretty roomy. And then once I wet block, all these cables should open up more so even than now. And once I have sleeves on here and it's all seamed up, then the sleeves extra weight should also hopefully be pulling it down, opening up a bit more too. So that's how this is going. So this is the front panel. And I have started and made pretty good progress on the back panel as well. So, oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. So this is my progress so far in the back panel. I've done 3 of the cable repeats, as well as the ribbed hem. So this is kind of how this is going. I don't actually even know how many repeats I need to do to match the front panel, but I'm really hoping, because I did these 3 repeats within like one day, so I'm really hoping that if I'm able to put this much into it day after day, that I can get done with it pretty quickly. The deadline isn't until August, so I do have still quite a bit of time, but I'm kind of getting antsy about this one for some reason. Like, yeah, I don't know. Just for some reason, I'm starting to get antsy about finishing it, even though I'm only on the back panel. But while I have this urge to really dedicate a lot of effort to working on it, I'm gonna try and ride that wave and get a lot more progress on this done. I think it's similar to the second sock syndrome, where it's like, now that the front panel is done, with the knowledge that I have to do a whole other one of those, it's feeling daunting, but in a way that is motivating me to get it done before I lose motivation. If that makes any sense whatsoever, I'm not sure. Yeah, so that's that. So back panel still to do, and then the 2 sleeves. Hopefully the sleeves won't be as daunting as doing the back panel, but we'll just kind of see how it goes. So I'm trying to get my yarn out of the bowl here. So the yarn that I'm using for this is Wool of the Andes Bulky, which is a 100% Highland wool non-superwash. And this colorway is called Blossom Heather. And I've talked about this before, it definitely reminds me of a strawberry smoothie, even more so than the Sugar Daddy color or the Sugar Daddy yarn. This definitely reminds me of a strawberry smoothie because it's this really nice heathered pink, but because it's heathered, it kind of gets these very like muddled blips of like a red or like a darker pink, which just feels very strawberry smoothie to me, because it's also kind of like a milky pink, which is really fun to work with. If you've been following along, I've been knitting a lot of pink lately. But I think once I clear out my pink queue, I'm going to return to a little bit more regular color variation. Even though it's not something to be ashamed of at all, pink is super cute. I love pink, and there's no shame in loving a color and knitting more of that color. But yeah, so that's my Snowfall sweater by Hazy Moon. This is going pretty well. I'm hoping that I can finish this in time for my next obligation. But the next thing that I want to talk about or show you, the next thing I want to show you is my progress on my Sweet Spring cardigan by Drops Design. And I talked about this last episode also as a new cast on from last episode. But this is a free pattern by Drops Design. And it's not the greatest free pattern in the world. Someone commented on my last video that all Drops Design patterns are just kind of like this, and I like agree. It very much gives off the vibe of like the free patterns that you would get like at Michael's, but like in the aisle, like in the aisle of the yarn, in the yarn aisle at Michael's, where they have like the tearaway free patterns that you can get, or the free pattern that's like on the inside of the ball band when you buy like yarn from big box craft stores like that. That's kind of the vibe that I get from this pattern. But I'm kind of muddling along, and part of it is now I'm definitely at a point where I understand the pattern, and especially just having an understand of how raglans work and having done raglans before, I'm kind of at an autopilot point where I'm just kind of using my row counters to keep track of like, say, how many rows I need to do before I do the next cable crossover on the sleeve. So I'm kind of at that point now where luckily I can autopilot a little bit. Yeah, aside from that, as you can see, like there's not, as you can see, I've definitely made progress on this, but not like a ridiculous amount of, like I haven't hit the next milestone of progress or anything like that. Like I'm still kind of at the same part where I'm doing the raglan yoke. I haven't yet split for sleeves. I haven't yet done anything really drastic to this. But yeah, so this is just kind of how it's going, and it's very fluffy. It's very fluffy, and it does shed, but it doesn't shed as much as it could. Like it could be worse, I guess is what I'm saying. Speaking of the yarn, this is once again that Corinne by Wendy mystery yarn that I picked up at a yarn swap several months ago. I think back in January. Oh gosh, January was so long ago at this point. I think it was in January that I went to that yarn swap. And so it is secondhand yarn, and yeah, if you have not been following the saga of this Korean by Wendy yarn so far, it's just this mystery yarn that is very vintage and is most definitely discontinued and has an extreme lack of information about it online. Like, I've tried everything. I've searched the ends of the internet looking for more information on this yarn to absolutely no avail. All the ball band says really is that it's 50 grams, but it doesn't tell me a yardage or meterage, and it doesn't tell me what yarn weight the yarn is. And it does have like a recommended needle size, but the recommended needle size does not really line up to how the yarn acts, if that makes any sense, because the recommended needle size would put it at a bulky weight, and the internet also says it's a bulky weight. But as you can the internet puts it as a bulky weight. The ball band's recommended needle size puts it as a bulky weight, but as you can see, the strand itself is very thin. So it's not even close to a bulky weight in reality. I guess you could knit it at a bulky weight, but it would be super, super loose gauge. Like even this, and so what I'm knitting it to is the equivalent of a fingering weight right now, gauge-wise. Because this pattern is meant for 2 strands of mohair, silk mohair, to make a fingering weight. And so I'm using 1 strand of this. So I'm knitting it at basically a fingering weight. And even then, the gauge is not hugely tight. Like, it's not gappy necessarily, but the gauge is not super tight either, you know? So yeah, it just kind of remains a mystery of a yarn, but it seems to be working so far. Like, looking at this, and of course I did gauge swatch for this pattern. Looking at this, it looks pretty normal. You know, like it looks pretty much as it should look once it's been knit up. And as far as the knitability, for it being such like a fluffy monstrosity of a yarn, it's knittable. I wouldn't even say that it's barely knittable. Like, it's knittable, but it's not the most pleasant experience is how I would rate it. Yeah. But it is knittable. And I am definitely able to see and read my stitches pretty well. So it's working. It's working, and as of now, I have not lost motivation to work on it, because that's often what I have found happens to me when I attempt to knit with like a fuzzy yarn that's usually a hand-me-down from somebody else. Is I'll start pretty ambitiously and then I'll lose steam just because the yarn sucks to knit with. So far that hasn't happened here, and I think it's partially because I'm excited about the finished product. And that's keeping me going through. Or I guess I'd say the yarn is knittable, but it is a challenge. But it's knittable enough, and it's enough of a challenge that it keeps me going on it. So that's kind of my verdict on the mystery Korean by Wendy yarn. Okay, I'm making great time, and I have one last thing to share with you all, which is my new cast on. So this episode might be shorter than usual. I feel like I'm talking super duper fast, but like I said, I had a time crunch in which to film this episode in. So my last cast on is one that I've been meaning to cast on for a while, and then I went through some debit card issue woes, and I had to postpone casting this on, which is why I had a swath of new cast-ons last time from patterns that cost me no money. But all that's been resolved, and I also finished my boho cami, which I had already paid for the pattern for, and so that freed up my needles to be able to work on this pattern, which I've been wanting to make for so long. And this is the Oolong tank by Amy Scher. It really doesn't look like much right now, but it is. So it's a bottom up tank top, seamless. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't really look like a whole lot right now. I started this, I think, not 2 days ago. It can't have cannot possibly have been 2 days ago. I started this, I think, before the weekend, so it's been less than a week. It's been less than a week since I started this, and I have not been working on it singularly. I've been working on other things too. But this is kind of what I've got. So the bottom is just like 1.5 inches of 1x1 rib, which is mostly where all my time went into. Like, 1x1 rib is so time consuming, but it looks so freaking pretty if you do it right. So it is on a smaller needle, and it's a really long rib section, and it just looks so pretty. Like, it's such a pain, but once I'm done, it feels so worth it to have done all that. So yeah. So like I said, it's a bottom-up tank, and it has a lace panel up the front here. Well, I guess you can see, like, these stitch markers is starting the lace panel, but you can't really see the lace motif a whole lot yet, I don't think. But when it does work up, it will be kind of like this pretty tea leaf design going up both sides of a v-neck, and then it splits the v-neck to do the shoulders, and then, yeah. But I think it'll be really pretty, because like this top, I will struggle to find applications in which I could wear it to like work or something like that. But this top, because it's more of a tank top, not like a spaghetti strap kind of camisole like this, I think as long as I'm wearing something underneath it, like just like a camisole underneath it or something, I think I can get pretty decent wear out of this for work and more, shall I say, more professional occasions than I can this kind of a top. So I'm very excited to work it up. Yes. So this yarn I mentioned a little bit earlier is Sayer Maryland, which is, I think it might be 80/20. This is just off the top of my head. I took the ball band off of this ball already. Off the top of my head, and I'll put a correction on here if I'm wrong about this, but I believe it is an 80/20 merino and linen. It looks kind of like a silk cocoon right now. But it's just really, really wonderful to work with, again, like this. Yeah, it just feels so good on the hands, but then it's also like crepey a little bit. Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, I'm having a really great time with this so far. And especially as I've learned over the past couple of updates that I've given here on YouTube, you'll remember that I have learned the importance of yarn choice when it comes to knitting projects that are in large part stockinette. This one is going to be a lot of stockinette for me, because it's basically this lace panel, but aside from that, the rest of it's going to be stockinette. And so I'm very glad that my yarn choice is enjoyable for knitting stockinette. Yeah, it just feels good. It's such a fun project so far, and I'm definitely excited to work on this some more as summer heats up, because so there's this, and then my Vilma top that I bought yarn for that I shared last episode. But aside from those two, I don't really have any other active summer knitting plans as of now. Of course, that could always change. I do have plenty of stash yarn, and I do have a quantity of yarn that I could use to crochet that I had intended to crochet something with. So I could always do stuff with that, but as of now, as far as like actual set out plans that I have for summer knitting, this is kind of it. So we'll see how long this takes me and how far it takes me, because it is mid-June right now. So I have June, July, and then August is kind of where it's still hot, but we're kind of starting to dip a toe into autumn, but it's still going to be hot. So we'll kind of see how the timeline shakes out and if I end up adding anything else to this. But in the meantime, I'd really appreciate it if you all left suggestions for me in the comments of other summer things that you're looking at doing right now. I know one that I was kind of playing around with in my head was doing the Margot top, also by Gregoria Fibers. I believe it was those twins who knit I think it was, I don't remember which twin it was. I don't remember which twin it was that knitted the Margot top. But I believe she used Illimani Sabri, which I've also talked a lot about as a yarn that I very much enjoyed working with. When I knitted with Sabri though, I knitted a gift for my little cousin who was turning 1. And it was like a baby vest, and so I figured cotton alpaca would be very soft. And she does love it. She wears it all the time. But I worked on that yarn and then I gave the final product away, but I really liked how it turned out. And so I think I would be interested in knitting with it for myself this time, and keeping the final product. So we'll see if that comes to any fruition or not. But yeah, aside from that, I don't really have any plans, because like I said, I'm not much of a summer knitter. So the world of summer knitting is kind of new to me. That also makes it my oyster, but I do feel like I want to be pickier about the summer garments that I knit, because like I said, like something like this, like the boho cami, is super cute, and but I see myself getting weekend wear out of this. Whereas something like the Margot top or something like this oolong tank is something that I could potentially wear during the week as well, or wear to work even. So that's kind of in the realm of things that I'm kind of looking at. So yeah. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, listening to all the things that I've been working on. Hopefully some things that I can look forward to in the future also. Like I said, let me know in the comments what all of you are working on right now. If you have any new summer cast-ons, if you have any new summer plans that you want to make, and if you have any summer recommendations for me, because I'm very much finding it hard to transition from my sweaters, my beloved winter fall sweaters, into summer knitting, and we have a lot of summer left. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at yarnyheart for more updates in between these episodes. And until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye!